One of our favorite moments is when JB Smoove did the media day and then showed up on the show the next day. And he was not supposed to come out till the second segment because our first guest showing up in person was Bob Costas. And we're like, hey, let's have Bob show up. And then JB Smoove will come out. And then Bob and JB had an interaction away because I do believe is one of the other stars of Pootie Tang on the Rich Eisen Show phone line right now.
We do have JB's co-star,
That's right.
Mr. Bob Costas.
How are you, Bob?
That happens to be true. And although JB and I were both exemplary in our own fashion in Pootie Tang, until that moment on your show, he and I had never met in person. It was one of the highlights not only of my career but of my life. Which shows you the state of my life, but that's another subject for another day.
No, come on now, Bob. Come on now. And by the way,
we love JB. JB is off the charts, terrific.
Are you a Curb Your Enthusiasm watcher as well?
Absolutely.
The best.
The Black family.
That's right.
Patriarch JB Smoove. Come on now.
And that was a fun moment for all of us. Bob Costas here on the Rich Eisen Show. Good to chat with you.
By the way, for those in these touchy times who might not be familiar, their surname was the Black.
That's right.
I wasn't just saying they were a generic Black or African-American family. They were the Blacks.
Yes.
The way my family is the Costases and yours is the Eisen.
That is correct. That is correct. And the Davids family is the Davids, et cetera.
That would be correct
and
also.
so on down the line. What do you think is the number one storyline for Super Bowl 51 we should all be, as media, if not fans, focused on, Bob?
Well, the storyline is so obvious you can't get around it. You go to 7. If they win 5, it kind of shuts the argument down, even though you can always make a case that eras are different and what Bill Walsh did or what Chuck Noll did in the context of their era, pre-free agency. Maybe there was stronger competition at the top. Who knows? But when you've gone to 7 and come close to going to more than that, since they lost a couple of close AFC title games, when you've gone to 7, and if you've won 5, it's pretty hard to argue against Brady and pretty hard to argue against Belichick. Maybe you could put somebody alongside them, but I don't know who you could possibly put above them. So that would be the lead storyline. I think if you're an Atlanta Falcon fan, or more importantly, a member of their team, you kind of like it this way. They've gone under the radar all season long, and yet look who they beat. Granted, they had home field advantage, but they earned that. They beat Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, a team that had been to 2 Super Bowls. And then they turn around and they beat Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, a team many thought was headed for the Super Bowl and which has a Super Bowl title with Rodgers as their quarterback under its belt. So I don't think they walked into the game in Houston trembling. And knowing Matt Ryan just a little bit, the Boston College background, the way he's comported himself in the NFL, I don't think he looks across the sideline, sees Tom Brady, and then breaks out in a rash. I just don't think that's the way this young man is put together.
Yeah, and we got a chance to eyeball Atlanta together, Bob. That was the first NBC Thursday night football game when Atlanta went into Tampa and just dismantled them. I don't know if any of us walking there thought that was a Super Bowl team, though, that night. And what the run that they have been on is akin to a team that I'm sure you saw up close and personal, the St. Louis Rams of greatest show on turf fame. We talked about that with Peter King, and it in a way, you could say it's heresy to try and compare any offense to that offense, but statistically, this Atlanta team is similar offensively in terms of their production to that team that the Belichick-Brady dynasty was born against, if you think about it, Bob.
Yeah, and some Super Bowl winning teams kind of signal it from the beginning of the season, or it's a carryover from the previous season. You know they're a contender. But there are any number of Super Bowl winning teams that got on their roll at midseason or at some point later in the season. It looked like the Packers might be that team again this year. So there's lots of ways to get there and lots of ways to win it.
Bob Costas of NBC Sports joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. How do you find Belichick when you've interviewed him before a game, or what's your history with him?
You know, it's been a very long time since I had any conversation at all with Bill Belichick. No hard feelings, at least from my part or from my direction. Hard to read the guy, the first time I interviewed him was after they had won their first Super Bowl, denying those greatest show on turf Rams their second Super Bowl win. At that time, a giant upset. And I interviewed both Belichick and Brady for HBO's Inside the NFL. And I found Belichick relaxed and engaging and extremely respectful and appreciative of the forum itself. And as the years have gone along, I guess, not just in dealing with me, but in dealing with the press in general, he's closed himself off more and more. Even when interviewed by Jim Nantz after they beat the Steelers and advanced to the Super Bowl, you wouldn't exactly call him effusive in that moment of triumph. That's just kind of what works for him. So I don't think I'm in any particular category. I think I'm in the same boat as most of the rest of us.
So while I have you here, and I love when you call into the show, I just want to hit you on a few other sports headlines that have gone down over the last couple of weeks, starting with the Baseball Hall of Fame Cooperstown class of 2017. What'd you think of it?
Well, I think we're at a point now where resistance is futile. And a lot of people have misread my position from the start. I was one of the very first members of the media, dating back before the turn of this century, to raise significant questions about performance-enhancing drugs, about what they were doing to the record books, about the authenticity of the performances we were seeing, about what it was doing to generational comparisons, which, while always tricky, are more legitimate and more interesting in baseball than in other sports. I've always been in that camp. On the other hand, I was never one who wanted to punish people unduly. So I always said from the start that I put Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds in kind of a different category, where if I were a voter, and as you know, it's only writers who vote, but if I were a voter, I probably would withhold my vote for a year or two as kind of a protest or an acknowledgement that they weren't entirely legit, at least for part of their careers. But then ultimately I would have voted for them because they weren't just Hall of Fame worthy on their natural merits and on what they had achieved before the evidence indicates they might have turned to performance-enhancing drugs. Before that, they were inner circle, first ballot, in the argument for greatest of all time on the short list type Hall of Famers. So I made distinctions between them and someone like, let's say, Sammy Sosa and Rafael Palmeiro. And now you can maybe make distinctions, not maybe, I think you should make distinctions between people like that and Manny Ramirez, who twice failed drug tests after the rules had been codified, after testing was in place, systematic testing, after actual punishments were in place. He twice failed drug tests, plus he was on the 2003 survey list. And on top of that, he was an indifferent outfielder and not much of a base runner, and at least once, maybe twice, openly quit on a team because he was upset with the circumstances surrounding those teams. So as great as he was as a hitter, one of the greatest right-hand hitters of my lifetime, I could justify not voting for Manny Ramirez. And maybe the same thing is true of Alex Rodriguez, which is a pity because on his natural merits, had he been injury-free, he would have been a Hall of Famer easy. He would have waltzed into the Hall of Fame. Anybody could have seen that when he was 19 years old, that he was bound for all-time greatness. But it's proven and acknowledged that after the rules were in place, he broke those rules. So you could make a case that you could put him in a different category. Now, having said all that, Mike Piazza, with suspicions only, is in. Because he's in, that accounts for why Bagwell and Ivan Rodriguez got in. So on that basis, how long can you keep Clemens and Bonds out? They still got 5 more years left. They've broken the 50% barrier. I think they'll move closer to 75%. And since a lot of Hall of Fame voting is based not just on your own feeling about whether this person meets your own Hall of Fame standards, a lot of it is based on, is this person as worthy as some who are already in? Well, if some who are already proven to have used performance-enhancing drugs or by common sense suspected of using performance-enhancing drugs are already in, how are you going to justify keeping the others out? I'm glad. People say to me, don't you wish you had a Hall of Fame vote? I'm actually glad I don't, because I don't know what the logical basis is anymore. for saying yes to this guy and no to that guy. It's such a hodgepodge now.
Well, also, Bob, Usain Bolt lost a gold medal based on one of his teammates popping for a performance-enhancing drug. So his triple, the record that he craved, he went to Brazil, to Rio to go get, no longer the case. Do you think that might cause Bolt to try it one more time in Tokyo?
Nah, I don't think that would be the reason. And I don't think any of this reflects negatively upon him because they made it clear that neither he nor his other teammates, besides the guy who was caught, are implicated here. And he was a member of a team. And in the individual events, the 100 and the 200, he won all 3 times, won convincingly all 3 times, holds the world record in both events. So I think this is a footnote for him and doesn't diminish his Olympic legacy at all.
Couple more minutes with you, Bob. Brent Musburger, did you ever have a chance to work with him? I'm just going through your history as well as his. Did you ever cross paths on an event at any point in time?
Oh, we crossed paths many times, and although I don't know Brent well, we certainly have had a friendly relationship for a long time. But no, we never worked together. We were never at the same network at the same time.
So what do you think his place in our industry is history-wise, Bob?
I think the most important thing is that he created the role and the model for the modern sports studio show, especially an NFL Sunday studio show. There had been other pre- and halftime and post-game shows surrounding NFL games in the early years, but he and Irv Cross and Jimmy the Greek and Phyllis George created that whole template around the NFL today. And to one extent or another, all the shows that all of us do have kind of taken our cue from that. There may have been some changes and some evolution, but basically he created it.
All right, and Chris Brockman, who you have met on occasion, coming on the show, a fellow Syracuse individual like yourself, Bob, he posited an idea that I said if the Patriots made the Super Bowl, we were going to force him to ask this question of Bill Belichick in a press conference. And would you like to pick Bob's brain before he goes, Chris, as to what needs to be done next week?
Bob, now, some people in the media have said if Bill wins this one, that would be his 5th as head coach, 7th overall. Maybe start a movement to rename the Vince Lombardi Trophy the Bill Belichick Trophy. Now, my question to Bill would be something like that, and then ask him if he would be in favor of this type of movement. And what do you think? How should I go about it, and what do you think his response would be?
Here's how you should go about it. You should pace around an otherwise empty room in which you are the only occupant and say it aloud several times to yourself until you get it out of your system. And then forget about it, because the degree of contempt and disdain which would be directed at you from Bill Belichick would be off the charts. Plus, Lombardi is the sainted winner of the first 2 Super Bowls. So you're not going to take it away from him. If the thing didn't have a name to begin with, or if the name had nothing to do with the award. Now, here's an award. I'm coming from left field here, I admit. But here's an award that should be renamed. The Ford C. Frick Award, Frick having been one of the commissioners of baseball, is the name of the award they give to those who make it into the broadcasters wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame. What the heck does Ford C. Frick have to do with that? They should rename that the Vin Scully Award.
Yes.
However, yes, but I don't, people don't have that much of a warm and fuzzy feeling about Bill. Plus, it isn't like Vince Lombardi has done anything in the years since his career or his death. Difficult to do something at death that would disqualify you. There's nothing that has lowered his standing, no matter how well someone else has done. This, I have to say, and how can I say this nicely, is a god-awful idea. It's a terrible idea.
No, but that's why we're forcing him to do it, Bob, because he came up with this idea before the Patriots made the Super Bowl. So it's locked in.
But Michael Irvin has also said the same thing, in fairness to me.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
You just want the theater.
Yeah, I want to make that media
absurd.
session all about me. That's right, Bob. You're right.
That's
you
it.
want the theater of the absurd that will ensue when this question is posed in front of the press corps with Bill Belichick already glancing at his watch through this torture that it is for him to entertain the press. You want this moment to live forever, even if it lives in infamy.
Yes, exactly, Bob. And I want him to do it without the Rich Eisen Show mic flag on the microphone that he's holding. I want.
Wait.
I'm distancing
You're the
myself.
one that told me to go up there and
backtracking.
say Chris Brockman with the Rich Eisen Show. Now, Coach
you
Belichick.
insisted the Rich Eisen Show was named in this.
No. I always defer to Bob. Bob.
All right, I won't do it, Bob.
No, you're going to do it.
No, you're doing
it. Bob just said not to do it.
Not with me. Bob, thank you for calling in.
All right. Enjoy Houston. See ya.
Oh, you bet.
See you,
That's
Bob.
Bob Costas.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.